right, Christine, welcome back to the Feminine Frequency.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I was thinking about the last time that you were on the show, which was in 2022. I invited you on for like a special Valentine's Day episode. I was like,
I must have been pregnant.
You were pregnant. This was pre-baby. Yeah. So, and it's been so beautiful to see your work evolve and also you stepping into motherhood. Like what a journey it's been.
What a journey. Life is a journey, isn't it? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
For each of us.
Yeah. And so today we're going to be talking about calling in your soulmate. And your journey of calling in your soulmate, I think, is such an inspiration for so many women. And I'm seeing this more and more with clients, is that a lot of women are calling in their soulmate later in life or in their 30s and their 40s. And I know for some women that can feel scary or discouraging or feel like it's not going to happen. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story of calling in your partner. And then we're going to kind of unpack what's available for women when it comes to feeling empowered in that journey.
Gosh, well, I feel like the story of calling in our partner starts at birth. I mean, it starts so early for us because we're impacted so much through our birth and early development, our attachment styles, our parents' relationship or lack of relationship, the modeling we got, even friendships. So everything impacts who we call in, because if we think about relationships as one of the ways we learn and as a way to evolve, we all evolve through relationships. And in so many ways, everyone is the one. We all hear that, right? Everyone is the one because they are teaching you what you need to learn. And so, like, I know this, and the part of me that has been doing personal development really since I was 11, but professionally 21 years. And like my spiritual self and my soul knows this. But my human self, like my human female self, also got very sucked in to the programming of like, you are chosen and you need to be married by this age and your fertility declines at this age and life is better if you have this person and this is what everybody does. And so like that, not necessarily that fight, but that kind of confliction between, I know that the point of being on the planet is not to find my soulmate. Like my soul knows that. But at the same time, my human self really, really desires that. So for me, that journey of like calling in the one began really, I think, in my 20s of being relational, really having like my first boyfriend at 18 and all of that. And I ended up getting engaged in my like mid 20s. And then my fiance broke up with me. I can't remember. It was like 6 or 7 months before the wedding. It was pretty close, maybe longer. It was the save the dates had been sent out. And I was devastated and felt so much shame and so much fear and panic and heartache and heartbreak. And in a lot of ways, that was my hardest breakup because it was so unexpected. So unexpected. And I think whenever we have, be it a relationship, career, or health, anything, have a huge expectation hangover of thinking things are going to go a certain way, especially being like a 20, 30-something-year-old woman and being like, okay, I've ticked this box. Now I can, now what's next? Build my career, have the kids. When that was, when that wasn't happening, it was very confronting for me. And so I did a good amount of work on myself. But there was this part, especially my late 20s, we're approaching, that really thought that the best way to get over that breakup was to find the better person, because there had to be a reason, right? Like we had this breakup so that I could find someone better. And we all do that when something really difficult happens. It's like, well, there's a silver lining, there's someone better. And often that's true, but sometimes if we spiritual bypass and get to the whole, like, there's something better coming along, we miss what we really need to look at and what got us there in the first place. So I don't even think it was a year after my breakup, I met my first husband. Great man, like ticked a lot of boxes, was different from my ex in a lot of ways. And I was 28 and I'm like, yes, I'm gonna be married before I'm 30. And for some reason that was like a big deal for me. And got engaged, got married. And then 3 years into the marriage, I was feeling like this is not my person. In my late 20s, I went back to school and got my master's degree in spiritual psychology. I also got off antidepressants I had been on them for nearly 20 years. Was doing a lot of awakening, and that wasn't as much of a value to my partner. Mm-hmm. And also we were young, and I didn't really understand masculine feminine dynamics or polarity. And it was the time in my own life where I could speak a lot of personal development talk, but it wasn't very embodied at the time. And so I think he'd hear me saying things and then go, well, but you're not really living that way. And so we had a very peaceful divorce, a very amicable divorce. But even a year or 2 years after that, I started regretting it, because there I was now in my mid-30s, very single, going, did I make the right choice? That was good enough. What am I thinking? I messed that up. And I went through this whole cycle of, regret. And then finally, it's like, all right, the common denominator in all these relationships is me. So I'm going to really dive in. I'm going to get a coach specifically on this, and I'm going to really look at where my relational blocks could be. And so I spent a good amount of time not dating, had an energetic do not disturb sign on, because I knew it would be a distraction. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what is it like just to be me? Because I'd been in relationships since I was young. And that was a great discovery, because I got to come up against my edges of where in my life I'd get uncomfortable enough to think I started needing someone, could I really be happy and content? I think content's a better word, not happy. Could I be content and feel like nothing was missing single? And I was able to do that. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to start dating. And I started dating, and I'm like, well, what is going on here? I feel really ready. And I feel like I've really done the work, and it's crickets. Or I'm attracting people I'm not interested in. And so I was like, well, maybe I need some more dating advice. Maybe I need a dating coach. And so I did all those things, and I just didn't really like the advice. And some of the advice, I was at an event I can't remember what it was for, but I was all dressed up. And one of the top dating coaches in LA, well, actually in the world, he's like, Christine, you're just too alpha. You need a beta man. You need a musician or a baker. I'm like, a baker? I don't need some dude to bake me cupcakes. Yeah. That is not really what I'm looking for. He's like, no, you're just too alpha. You're too much in your masculine. And I was really hurt by this. And I started thinking, gosh, I've heard that before, that too much in your masculine thing. But I never felt masculine. I've always felt very feminine. But when something upsets me in that instance, it's a trigger. So well, there must be something there for me to unpack. And what I discovered is it wasn't that I was in my masculine. I had a lot of doing energy in the world because I was an entrepreneur and a single woman, and I was a lot of doing energy. It was more about my nervous system. I was in hypervigilance, which can look masculine. But you can have a very feminine essence and a feminine frequency and appear masculine when it's really just basically a trauma response or coping strategy of being hypervigilant. And that can look controlling. It can look like, wanting to have control over things. But really it comes from fear, not from I'm just in my masculine and I want to, dominate things. And so that's when I really began nervous system work and healing more somatically so that I could learn how to be and do in the world, not in a hypervigilant energetic. Because I was like, that guy's picking up on something. It's actually not my masculine, but what is it? And once I was able to work with that and heal that and really become more embodied and feel safer in my feminine energy, then I was like, all right, now I'm really ready. And still crickets. And now 40s, knocking on the door. Well, what is going on here? Do I need another coach? And then I thought, okay, I've been a coach for 20 years. I'm going to put myself through my own program. Sorry, this is such a long story. I'm going to put myself through my own program. And so I created my program of I call it Be the Queen. That's what I called it. Because I wanted, and I was speaking more in archetypes, not in terms of thinking of queens and kings in history, more archetypical. And to me, a queen represents a woman who's really embodied and knows where she sits and knows her place and know who she is and is looking for someone to sit next to her and look out together, Not look at each other. Are you going to fix me? Are you going to heal me? Are you going to be the mom I never had? Are you going to be the dad I never had? But really like sit next to each other and look at the world together and be driven by our values and vision together. And so I put myself through this program and I was committed to it. And that was New Year's Eve on 2017, so coming into 2018. And in April, I was at a friend's house and I sat down at a computer because my friend was working on a new startup. And there was a face, one of the founders. And I said, I know him. Who is that? And my friend said, oh, that's Stefano Stefandos. And I'm like, well, that's a name. That's a name. Like I would know that name. And they're like, he lives in Perth. I'm like, forget it. And they said, well, he's really nice. You're both going to be in Europe at the same time. Do you want an introduction? And one of the things in my Be the Queen program that I made for myself was being super clear in what I was looking for, because I did the whole, this guy doesn't seem commitment ready, but I can change him thing. Or he's saying he is, but his actions aren't. I crystal clear clarity of like, I don't need to get married tomorrow, but this is the kind of relationship I'm looking for. And are you looking for that? And if you're not, I don't care how cute you are.
Yep.
So I told my friend, ask him if he's calling in his queen. He's commitment ready. He's ready to have like a conscious sacred union kind of relationship. And she said, you want me to ask him exactly that? And I said, yes. Don't soften it.
Yep. Clear as can be.
Clear. And I don't need a pen pal.
Yep.
So she asked him and he said, yes, actually I am. And we were introduced. We had a 3-month relationship over WhatsApp and we met in Europe. I was 40. We met in Europe and we moved in together that day and got married 3 months later.
Wow. I love the boldness of that. And I think that I really want to normalize this of being really clear on what you want and not waiting around or like wasting time and energy just to like see if something's going to be aligned. Like that clarity of knowing what you want and being willing to stand in that and being willing to be okay with saying no to the things that are not a full yes is so huge.
And not try to convince ourselves that they are, because attraction can be tricky.
Yeah.
It can be super tricky and someone can tick a lot of boxes. But if there's not that like safety in our nervous system, I don't care how turned on you are, if there isn't safety in your nervous system, then it's a no.
Yeah. Yeah. Say more about this attraction piece because it shows up a lot for women. Yeah.
So one of the there's 5 different kinds of relationships I define. And one of them I call an issue-based relationship. I should probably come up with a sexier term, but that's what I call it right now because it's pretty clear. In issue-based relationships, the attraction is off the charts. You have amazing chemistry with someone. But usually there's like a huge red flag or a huge deal breaker or a huge trigger. They are the kind of relationships you have the most anxiety with, where you kind of don't know where you stand, where you have the fight and then like the amazing makeup sex. Because the chemistry there, and that's what keeps you coming back. If the chemistry wasn't there, you never date this person. But it's important to have some issue-based relationships because they illuminate our unresolved issues. So an example may be you grew up, I'm just going to do a simple example. You grew up in a house where one or both of your parents were addicts of some kind. And you are crazy attracted to someone that just, watches a little porn on the side. Not a big deal, right? And we try to convince yourself of that. But all the while you feel this like uneasiness like you felt as a child of not knowing where you stand and kind of feeling like there's some secrets going on and not really feeling like there's this openness and safety again. And you draw this person in because there's these unresolved issues from childhood. And so, as you know, we date our parents in so many ways. The inner child is very attracted to people that remind us of mom or dad in some way because the child thinks, oh, this guy seems like dad. Maybe I can finally get what I didn't get from dad. In this example, maybe you wanted your dad to love you enough to stop drinking. And now you want a boyfriend that you're super attracted to not watch porn because he loves you. So that's the thing with the attraction is we want to just be conscious of like what's the attraction? And if I separate like the sexual attraction, do I feel safe with this person? Like if I don't hear from them when I text, what happens to my nervous system? If I ask a question, do I get an honest answer? When there is a fight or argument, is the other person taking responsibility? Do I feel heard? Because usually in issue-based relationships, the same unmet needs from childhood are what show up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I learned about this, I was like, this is crazy. You mean like subconsciously we're just seeking partners to heal our childhood wounds? Like I was like, this is insane. But the more that I've read about it with the imago theory and with, getting the love that you want, and there's so much research behind this. And then I started looking at, that partner definitely was there to help me to complete this pattern with my mom. And this partner was there to help me to complete this pattern with my dad.
Yep.
And I think that so many people think that it's like when we break up or when we get divorced, that it's like this failure. But really, all of these experiences are part of our healing journey, and they're all teaching us something.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know that you met your husband Stefanos in your 40s, and I was married in my 20s, got divorced. I met my partner in my early 30s, and we both had been divorced before. And I feel like because we had been married already before that, like that we weren't particularly like in a rush, but more so like we knew each other, we knew ourselves so well and had worked through a lot of that stuff. And I was so grateful for that.
Yeah.
So I really want to encourage women who are, in their 30s and 40s, whether you're post-divorce or whether you are single and you've never been married, that like everything is unfolding how it's supposed to. And we get to do the inner work to then attract a different type of partner.
Yeah.
Right. Which is exactly what Be the Queen is all about.
Yeah. And especially for women in their 20s too, really take off the urgency to get married. Or to be in a serious committed relationship or think you have to do something by 30. I think it's important if relationships of high value, to date a lot of, different people, to get experiences, and all the while be actively looking at your childhood and stuff from mom and dad, because the higher you can increase your EQ in your 20s and really learn. And I do think in your 20s, you need the support of a great facilitator, coach, or therapist, because we just don't have enough life experience. The more you can learn about that and be clear about what you actually need, not just what you want, is super, super valuable. So to really take that urgency off and to use it as a time to learn, to explore, to heal, and to become really discerning.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned something earlier that I think I want to highlight around masculine and feminine energy. And you talked about how, you may have been presenting as being in your masculine because of some unresolved trauma. So for women who maybe are having a hard time connecting with their feminine energy and who want to be able to really soften and surrender or to feel safe within themselves and in relationship, what would you recommend for them? Where would you recommend to start?
Well, you're reminding me of a statistic, and I heard it at Trevor Noah's stand-up. So I'm going to assume that it has relevance, and I'm sure you've heard it as well. But a large group of women were surveyed, and they were asked, if there were no men on the planet for 24 hours, what would you do? And the number one answer was take a walk at night, like go out at night alone. And that always really struck me, because I'm like, no wonder so many women are, I can't think of a better word than accused of being too much in our masculine energy, when really kind of in our world and in our society, most women don't feel completely safe out in the world. We feel like more the prey. We are, physically, I'm going to speak in generalities, physically not as strong as men. And, like last night, my husband was out of town. I'm alone in the house with my daughter. It was a full moon. I tend to get a little my anxiety kicks up on full moons, and I'm like thinking of the plan of what I do if someone comes in our house. Like I break the window in the bathroom and I throw her over the fence. And, these are, and I can guarantee you when my husband's home alone with my daughter, he is not thinking those thoughts.
Yeah.
So I think for women, we really need to give ourselves some compassion and some acknowledgement and some like, of course, like even if I haven't had deep trauma with men, and a lot of women unfortunately have had trauma with men, I like my nervous system is a little more amped up. Mm-hmm. And, I may, as a survival strategy, as an adaptive strategy, present a little more masculine because that's what I've had to do to feel safe, to succeed in business, to be accepted, to make my dad proud. I mean, there's so many reasons. Even little girls are much more rewarded for their doing than their being. Mm-hmm. And so if we can just kind of go, of course, this is an area where all of us, most of us, struggle sometimes in like, what is this dance between like really being embodied in my feminine and like presenting masculine sometimes? And what I come back to is that hypervigilance, right? So to answer your question, the first part I kind of answered that, like, let's just have compassion with ourselves. Like, of course, I am a little more, I'm going to walk down the street or get into an elevator with a stranger a little different than a man does. Mm-hmm. Like, of course. And I am going to probably feel safer when I'm in control of things. Mm-hmm. Like, of course. And is needing to be in control of things and needing to know how everything's going to go all the time really what I want? Because when we're in that dynamic of like finding safety through certainty, it can be tricky to call in a healthy masculine man because so much of the polarity and the attraction and so much of what the masculine pole holds is that groundedness, that really holding down and that leadership, which so many women are looking for. I can't tell you how many women, especially in our program, are like, oh my God, can't I just make a reservation? Please, like this is so annoying. And so we want that leadership, but we've got to slip into the feminine superpower of surrender, which is impossible to do until we do our own internal work, until we do some inner child work and connect with that little one who is the scared one, right? Who is the dysregulated one, and learn how to like rewire and reprogram our nervous system. And that's something we teach in our program like more in depth, but I just want to give a very specific example by going back to that of course statement. So a way that you can start rewiring your nervous system, let's say you're going on a date for a first time, or you're just going to a party where there may be someone, or just social anxiety. So instead of trying to pep talk yourself or do a bunch of fancy breath work beforehand or, a vision board or whatever it is, what you do is as you're feeling the anxiety, you put your hand on your heart and your hand on your belly, hand on your heart center and hand on your belly. And you go, of course I'm nervous right now. This is unknown people. This may be reminding me of that party in 5th grade where no one talked to me. It's okay. Like, this makes a lot of sense. I'm feeling this way. When we can go into the energetic of compassion and when we can validate our feelings and make them make so much sense, our nervous system starts going more into that parasympathetic response. And if you look at most of the parenting advice out there today is all about that. It's all about acknowledging your kids' feelings. I'm angry, mommy. Of course you're angry. That's upsetting. Not, don't be angry, sweetie. Like, that's a silly thing to be angry about or ignoring it. Like, we do that with ourselves. Like, I shouldn't have this anxiety. I'm 37 years old. Like, why? The minute we do that, we're dysregulated. So just that, I call it the of course. That's one of my favorite tools, the of course tool. Yeah. And that will start rewiring things.
Yeah. Even just the simple, like, I love the hand on the heart and the belly. Like, really, that to me is this like grounding, calming, like almost like I've got me, like I'm holding myself, right? And then the inner child work of reparenting and giving your little girl like, okay, yeah, it's okay that you feel scared. It's okay that you feel nervous, right? It's okay that you feel like you want to control things, like just giving that acknowledgement. And to me, there's like a big exhale in that. There's a relief, because if we're constantly denying or judging or feeling shame around how we're feeling, then there's a part of us that's not being accepted.
Absolutely.
And there's a part of us that's being abandoned.
Right.
And so this is such a simple practice, but there's a lot of rewiring that has to happen, because I know for myself and for so many other women, for years and years and years, we've lived in a place of denying our emotions, or telling ourselves we shouldn't feel that way, or making ourselves wrong for feeling that way. So yeah, this reparenting work is so huge.
Or try to move ourselves out of a situation by doing more, which then puts us in that more doing masculine energetic. Whereas if we can just be with where we are, that's the healing balm. And that's actually what we're looking for from a partner, is someone just go, of course, like it makes so much sense you're feeling this way. I got you.
Yeah. Yeah. You gave a visual earlier that I felt was really powerful. And you talked about, the archetype of a queen and sitting in her throne, like feeling embodied, and then being side by side. Right. I loved that visual. Let's talk more about the queen archetype and why that's been such like a center core pillar of your whole program and process.
Yeah. And thrones of equal height, not like in where the king's up here and the queen's down here. Well, for me, archetypes have always really resonated with me.
Me too. Yeah.
And I feel like archetypes, we can all tap into it. It's like, all right, well, what am I going to tap into in the collective unconscious, right? Am I going to tap into this whole woman needs to be chosen thing in order to be valued? Or am I going to like hook into this archetype frequency that's up here? And I'm like, I'm going to choose the archetype. So the queen for me, and maybe this is just because of my personal stuff, she feels like she has nothing to prove. And what I've seen in my own life and with so many women, well, people in general, but for specifically talking about women calling in a partner, post-divorce, never been married, whatever, at any stage, at any age, there's often the like, there's something wrong with me. And if only I changed this one thing about myself, I'd be lovable. Or if only I healed this one thing about myself, I'd be lovable. And in the queen archetype, that doesn't exist, right? There's so much focus on mission. And to me, like, and again, archetypical, if a queen is looking out at the people she's leading, to me, it's looking inside at all our inner child pieces, all our parts from an IFS perspective, like being able to manage our own queendom inside ourselves and really lead ourselves through our life in a really regal, empowered way. Then what we call in is a king, a man who's done the same. And that was really important for me, is like, I didn't want a man that was still in his proving phase. And, we can bookmark this, but there was one massive almost deal breaker with my husband. Like one thing that was like a huge thing I had to really reckon with inside myself that didn't fit into my king archetype. And I kind of had to redefine, like, what does a king archetype mean? And I was defining it through very superficial qualities. Like, he's made this much money, he's made this much impact. And I'm like, wow, I'm defining the queen by such an internal thing. I need to look at the king in that way as well. And so for me, the king is really a man who knows who he is, knows the direction he's going, also isn't trying to prove. And one thing my husband says that I love, that he says to me, is he's like, I have found so much freedom and commitment. I'm like, wow, tell me more. He's like, well, like, now that I'm committed to you and to our relationship, I feel so much freedom to do my mission in the world, because I have a partner, and like this one aspect of my life is done. And I feel so much freedom in that. And I'm like, that's a very kingly thing to say. So as much as we're looking at the queen, we need to look at how we're defining the king, because a lot of women subconsciously, it's more a knight in shining armor.
Yes.
Or prince.
Yes, the prince. The prince is so, like, you can find lots of princes. There's lots of princes out there. Yeah. Yeah. When I was feeling into what I wanted in a partner. And I noticed that I was doing that too, where I was like, it was like this like success thing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the word that came through for me was like, I want someone who's established in themselves and in their lives, you know, who really knows themselves and who knows their purpose and who isn't just like figuring it out.
Right.
Right. Like for me, especially where I was in my life, I was like, I want someone who can meet me there. And in order to do that, like I had to keep, you know, being really rooted in like, okay, I'm whole and complete as I am. I know who I am. I know what I want. And I'm also not willing to settle for less.
Yeah.
Like I'm willing to say no, even when it's really challenging. Like the partner that the man that I dated before this partner, like there were a lot of amazing things and it was like really wonderful, but it wasn't a full yes. And I'd love for you to speak into like, how do you know when a partner is truly aligned? Because there can be on the surface, there can look like someone's aligned, or there could be aspects that feel aligned. And then there's sometimes like it's not the full alignment.
Right.
So I think that can be confusing or can be tricky to just determine.
Yeah. Hey, this is such a juicy question because it's like, how do we know when someone's aligned? And then also, how do we not pass up someone that we think isn't aligned, but actually could be a really good match for us?
Yes.
So for me, I come back to the body, and so much, you know, and I see this, I've coached women, well, people for 21 years, primarily women, one-on-one retreats, over Zoom, on the phone, you name it. And for a woman to really open up to intimacy on all levels, she's got to feel safe. She's got to feel safe. And that to me is our physical indicator of alignment. Like, do I feel safe with this person? Number one, because that was one of the key things with my husband, is when we met for the first time, I felt excited and I felt like butterflies because we were meeting for the first time. But the first time we kissed, I didn't feel fireworks. I didn't feel like this like drug that I needed more of. I felt like, oh, this is home. Like I just relaxed into it. And there was like an opening versus a gripping. And women were if we turn down this, we can really feel into our body and we can feel whether we're relaxing or whether we're gripping. Both can be forms of attraction, but the gripping is probably going to get you not a great outcome, where the relaxing into is. So that's like on the body level. And then I just think, like you said before, it's being really clear and really honest about what you value and what's important to you, and doing that self-assessment of, okay, these are all the things, I'm going to write down all the things I think are important. And then I'm going to really question them. And are they really, like, what are my 5 core values? And does that line up with somebody? And then really like seeing how you do life with, because I don't think you know, unless there's a huge red flag or even orange, I kind of don't think you know until you go through some shit. And that's another indicator. Like, when you go through a rough patch, how does that person show up? What is there? Do they stonewall? Do they get defensive? Like, what do they do? Because true alignment means that even like in the toughest of times, we find our way back together and we are great partners in getting through the tough times. So those are maybe some things like on a deeper level. And I think we all can kind of go, you know, like, we like the same things and we both value personal development, which I want to speak to for a moment, because a lot of women are doing a lot of work. And one of the things I hear so much from people in our program is, where are all the conscious men? Like, we're doing all this work. Where's the guy doing all this work? And first I want to say they're out there. Those men are out there. They absolutely are. Are they in as high numbers as women right now? Probably not. At this time in history, there really is a feminine rising. Like, we're healing and shifting. We all chose to come in at this time. So remember that. You chose as a woman to come in at this time. But what I'm seeing more and more is men are really open. And often it is that invitation from the feminine of her just being in her herness, not read this book, listen to this podcast, go to this seminar with me. Like, her just being embodied in it, that the men are like, wow, like I should really actually think about what my dad was like. And the men are open and coming to the work. They're either already in the work or they're coming to the work. So they're for sure there. And I would say to women, don't pass up a man just because he isn't as into personal development as you are. See how he responds. Is he curious about what you're sharing? Like when you ask him deeper questions, is he reflective or does he divert? Like if there's an openness there, I don't think that that's a problem. So one of the other things I would say about alignment, making sure we're not passing up something that could be great. And maybe I'll share my personal story to give an example and then we can dive deeper.
Yeah.
So one of the things in my Be the Queen program I did for myself is on that New Year's Eve, I burned my list. I had a fire pit in my backyard and I burned my list. And I said to God, clearly my picker is not working. Like I said I've surrendered, but I still have this list. So I must not be surrendered. So you choose. And that was very scary because it was like, but I might not get something I really want. It's sort of like the visual I get is ordering something at a restaurant and then chasing the server and going, but wait, did you get that? Do you know I want the dressing on the side? Do you know I want my salmon well done? But we don't do that. We trust that it's going to come back the way we want. But surrendering can feel like, oh my gosh, I may not get what I want, especially if we feel like we've settled or we haven't gotten what we want. It can be hard to have faith. But I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this for at least a year. Just really, really surrender and throw my list away. So when I met my husband, one of the things on my list that I burned was needs to make as much or more money than me, because I had all kinds of reasons for that. Everything from I don't want to be the breadwinner to I want the polarity to I don't want a dreamer. There was all kinds of justifications, but I burned my list. So I found out when Steph and I met, like the second day, he had no money and was in debt. And my whole body was like, oh, but you're so like everything else is so great. Oh no, I have to end this. And luckily I had done enough work on myself to be like, okay, wait, just hold off, because the tendency, like one of my patterns is to like panic. And like, let me just pause for a moment. And so I asked myself, I remember journaling and asking myself some really important questions about like why someone making a lot of money was important to me. Because there's the thing, but then there's the feeling we think we're going to get from the thing.
Yes.
And I was like, well, I want to be the feminine in the relationship. I don't want the pressure. If we have kids, I want to take like 3 years to really be home. I'm attracted to men with mission. Like, sorry, bakers, but I
not for me.
Metaphorically, you know what I mean? I'm sure there's some really successful mission-driven bakers out there. And so I was like, all right, well, so I want to feel safe. I want to feel led. I want to feel desired and like someone is desirable. I want to feel like attracted to someone. And I was like, but I feel all those things with him. So is this really a problem? Because then I started to look at what scares me about a guy with no money. They're dreamers. They're not commitment. They're flaky. I have to do everything. And that wasn't how he was showing up. He was leading. He always texted me back. He planned things. He was on top of things. And so I really leaned in. And then I got this incredible experience. And this is something that I think is I think it's important. I'm curious to see what you say. One of the things that I think we've forgotten as the feminine, as we've been on this like women's empowerment and getting out of that kind of 1950s subservient type of thing, is we've forgotten how to be a muse and the power it is, like the access to that as women that we have to be a muse. Because there was a part of me when I was like, well, I don't want to break up with this guy, but I could teach him how to build a career. Like he wants to do what I do, like no problem. And then my queen voice was like, nope.
I'm not here to coach. I'm not here to teach.
No, you're not doing that. You're
Yeah.
not doing that. Be a muse. Like see if you can not control and just be in your feminine frequency and inspire and love and believe in him. And I was like, that sounds so subservient. And the muse voice was like, no, what is subservient about that? what is subservient about loving and believing in someone? He shows up, he does the work. And Amy, I had to bite my tongue so many times, and there were so many mistakes he made. But I really just was like, this is my edge. Like, this is my growth right here. The easy thing for me to do would either be break up or coach him and build his business for him, because those have guarantees. This is uncharted territory. So I did it. And within 6 months, he was out of debt and making money. And within 2 years, he was making more than me.
Wow. So cool. Yeah. And that muse, that inspiration, honestly, I feel like is the only way to really call a man forward. Because if a man feels like you're the mom and they're the kid, or you're putting pressure on them,
Or you're the boss, or
that's not sexy. And they're not actually going to be able to do it for themselves. It's going to be because they feel like they have to live up to your expectations and standards. The other thing that you said that I think is so important, and I tell this to my clients all the time, is when you can see your partner and hold them as capable.
Yes.
That is the most empowering thing that you can do for a man.
Yes.
Is to put your fears and your doubts and your worries aside and look at this person who you're choosing to be with right now and say, like, I believe that they're capable.
Yep.
And you don't even have to say that directly to them, but if they feel that, because if they feel you criticizing them, or if they feel you belittling them, doesn't have to be with your words, it can be with your energy.
Yep.
They feel that, and that's not encouraging for them to rise up. That's not going to help.
No.
So yeah, I really, really love those insights. And this piece that you shared around, like, how do you know if a partner is in alignment, and this piece around the body, like, I had to come back to that over and over again, because our patterns are in our mind, or our expectations, and these stories of who this person should be are in the mind. The part that gets confusing, which is what you just highlighted, is when, like, you said, like, oh, when I found out he wasn't making the amount of money, and then, like, you contracted. And I think that's the part that can be so confusing for women, because like, oh, but my body's like, I have anxiety about it. And so I think learning how to distinguish and listen to your own body. What is the intuition? What is actually the fear and the trigger? And how does that present in your own nervous system? Like, this is a practice, and it's a language that we learn, and we learn through experience and through time. And that was the one thing for me, like, my mind, 3 months into my relationship, I wasn't sure if I was a full yes. And I almost broke up with my partner, and I had to keep coming back to my body, and I'm like, this feels safe.
Yeah.
This feels right. Like, I'm not a full yes to leaving. It's not a full no for me.
Right.
And I had to really stay open to that. And I do think that a lot of women think that, like, oh, it's got to be that, like, attraction and like, it's my soulmate at first glance. And it's like, it's just that the fairy tale story that we really need to unravel.
Yeah.
Often that's
really
just
is
trauma.
Trauma, programming, so many things. And there is no perfect person. There's going to be stuff with anybody. I'm sure you and your partner have your stuff. Steph and I have our, like, there's just going to be stuff. But for me, what it came down to is, like, one, even when I had that contraction, I was also, but I feel so safe with him, you know? Like, so I had to really feel into what am I making that mean? Like, where am I future forecasting that may not be even true, most likely isn't true. But the key thing for me was, this is somebody who, like, will do his work and is committed to doing his work and values consciousness as much as I do. And I felt like if that is there, we can really figure anything out.
Yeah, there's no perfect person.
No.
There's going to be things that come up, and it's like, how does this person show up when there's conflict? How does this person show up to challenges in their own life? And that's the real test that, like, only time can really tell, is what you're sharing. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about your program, Be the Queen, and I love this program so much. I've known about your work since before I was even really into personal development work, I was a nutritionist and I was starting to get curious about personal development. And I read your book, Expectation Hangover, when I was going through my divorce, and it was, or before I went through my divorce, and it was so helpful for me. And, you know, I've listened to your podcast for years, and I know that this program that you've created is, you know, has so many transformational insights, and I'm really excited for you. And Stefanos teaches in it as well,
Yeah,
right?
we teach it together.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're teaching it again this year.
Teaching it live again this year. We've taught 7 since 2019.
Wow.
Which is really cool because when you go through the program, you get unlimited, like lifetime access to our alumni calls that are every month. It's a coaching call, a group coaching call. And so now we have women with kids. And so we're talking parenting stuff, we're talking marriage stuff, relationship, and then we have people that are just dating. So it's been a really cool journey arc. And I turned my own personal program into a program because there were, you know, a lot of people that followed my journey, and all of a sudden Steph showed up and people are like, how'd you do that? And I got that question so many times. And whenever I get a question repeatedly, that's the universe going, Christine, like you need to teach this or share it. And so I wanted to do it with Steph because I wanted a masculine perspective in there. And a lot of the work we do is nervous system, family of origin, inner child. And so archetypically, again, we hold that role of mom, dad, masculine, feminine, and for women to have that healthy polarity and perspective is super valuable as well. But yeah, we do nervous system work, inner child work, and women listening may be like, I've done all that. You haven't done it in this container in the way that we do it. And Steph and I both, he's been in this world for 20 years. I've been in it for more than that. We get all our best stuff and combine it, and we're always evolving it every year. And it's an incredible community too. And another cool thing that we do is I have a woman that I've been working with for many years named Erica Alora, and she does like energetic clearing of Akashic records and collective consciousness programming. And so there's a lot of like stuff going on behind the scenes that's happening as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen behind the scenes of this program, and it is one of the best out there. And you and Stefanos coming together to share your wisdom and to hold this container is really amazing.
Yeah.
What are some of the takeaways, you know, for women who are curious about Be the Queen? Like, what can they expect to walk away from the program with?
Really, with Be the Queen, whatever key takeaway you need is what you're going to get. There's really no stone left unturned, but we do it in a really a feminine way. You know, my style is not push through the barriers, unleash those blocks, like manifest, you got to manifest what you want. It's very feminine, it's very compassionate, and it's super, super powerful. So one of the things, even with women who, I mean, we have an over 65%, I say success, but I don't think success is just getting into relationship, a 65% rate of women who are in relationship within a year of the program.
Incredible.
And the women who aren't, you know, feel like the frustration and the anxiety and all of that is really gone. And we've had some women that graduate from the program and are like, you know what? I am so content being me. And like, I may date from here or there, but I just thought I wanted a relationship. I don't know that I really do. So you get to a point at the end of the program where you just are so content. And I love that word content because it's just, I think, what we're all going for in any aspect of our life, where you're so content and nothing feels like it's missing, that you have that clarity. And the other thing I love about the program is through going through the program, you stop searching and swiping and trying to find it. You attract. And that's the power of the feminine. We're the ultimate receivers, basic anatomy. We are the receivers. And so to get into that receptivity position where you don't have to be the one feeling like you need to go out and make this happen in your life is such a relief for women.
Yeah. Yeah. And having that constant thing of like needing a partner or wanting to be validated by men, like it's so exhausting. And
so exhausting.
And that contentment, there's a Sanskrit word for that I remember from my yoga teacher training when I did it over a decade ago that I love this word. It's called santosha.
Oh yeah.
And it's the word for contentment. And really, yeah, that just like also that deep, safety within yourself and groundedness, like that's the queen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And that's what we really hold for you. And the thing with calling in a relationship is one thing that was so important for me was to honor my desire and have my longing, because that's the frequency we need to put out. Because if we're like, I'm content in myself and I don't need a man, then we're not really broadcasting our desire. And so that sweet spot between having our desire and our longing and really making that okay and letting that be powerful without suffering. And when women can embody that, magnetic.
Yeah, you get to honor the desire. Not like, I don't want this thing, when you really do want that thing.
Yes. And be in your longing and learning how to be in longing and desire without suffering. That's a superpower of the feminine.
Beautiful. Yeah, so powerful. So you have an incredible 3-day event coming up very shortly this week. I think on February 11th is when it starts. So tell us about this amazing 3-day journey.
Yes. Well, speaking of magnetism, it's called Love Magnet.
Yeah.
And it's all about, attracting your person without the doubt, without the settling, without any of that. And we're going to be teaching about an hour and a half each day over the course of 3 days. And we're going to be diving into the archetype you're probably in, which is not the queen. We're diving into that. I'm going to be teaching about the 5 types of relationships. I mentioned the issue base, but we're going to talk about the other 4. The 5th one is the one you probably want. We're going to be going over myths and misunderstandings about dating. We're going to be doing an actual embodiment practice where you actually are going to feel your queen. And you're also going to feel your king as well, because as you know, and as we've talked about, it is our embodiment, it is our frequency that draws them in. We're also going to be talking about like men, like what's going on with men and where are the conscious men and what does a conscious man really mean? And really like breaking down some of these myths, like the whole you're too much in your masculine myths and other myths that women have bought into. Even the whole, like, you can't have a baby over 35 or it's harder.
Myth. Yeah.
Not true.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, we are going to put a special link in the show notes for my listeners to come to your event. And I'm so excited for them to learn from you and Stefanos. If you're listening to this and you are calling in a relationship and or wanting to really take your relationship to the next level, which is about being the queen within yourself, right? And calling your partner forward, then you are definitely going to want to be at this event and make sure to check out Christine's program. I just want to say personally, thank you for all the work that you do. I've been a longtime podcast listener, and I'm just grateful for the way that you show up in the world and grateful for all the love that you share with your community.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me I love the name of your podcast. I think it's amazing because sometimes I think femininity we think of it as demotion, like we're not going to be as powerful if we truly are in it. And what we're all remembering is how incredibly powerful our feminine energy is. So thank you for having such a powerful platform to help us remember.
It's truly my pleasure.